King 9 offsuit, I'm going to call against a wide 3-betting range. And the flop is not great. You know, we have a backdoor straight draw, backdoor flush draw, 1 overcard. He ends up checking to me, and I decided to bet here, which I think is fine. You know, you could definitely make an argument for checking back to realize my equity, but I do feel like what's likely happened is that he's checked with a kind of weak hand, thinking that on 10-7-3 I'm not going to make Phil fold very often because his range hits his board pretty hard. He's not folding a lot of his ace highs anyways. He's not folding his king queens anyways, and he definitely has a lot of gutters and 1 pair, 2 pair flush draw type hands. So I really could see him, or I think it's likely that he's giving up with a lot of air, and because of that I think I can fire this c-bet, and it works out a little bit better than checking back. But I mean, I should point out that just because I think he's air heavy when he checks doesn't mean that I need to bet now. I can take the pot down later, or I can show down my king high potentially, given, you know, depending on how the board runs out. He ends up check raising, which I find very suspicious for the kind of the same reasons that I expected his checking range to be air heavy. He could have expected a lot of action against a c-bet, so I felt like, and still feel like, with a lot of his stronger hands, I would expect him to go ahead and just bet, expecting that he can get some action with a call or a raise. It's still possible. Maybe he has a hand like queens, and not that he was afraid, or let's say ace 10. Not that he was afraid, but let's say he bets and the turn is a queen, king, or jack, or 9, or 8, or 6, or club. The hand gets a little bit trickier for him, so he may have just wanted to get a check raise in and make it kind of an all-in or fold situation now, although he is giving me good odds to call with a lot of those hands anyways. I do think that's very possible, but I really felt at the time that it was much more likely that he was giving up and either decided after the fact or maybe beforehand thought that a bet wouldn't have much fold equity, but a check raise would. So I did go ahead and go for the click it back. Stacks are such that well, there's something else important about this, which is that I don't expect him to very often be check raising a hand like 9-8 or any of his club hands, other than maybe like a nut flush or like king 3 of clubs, let's say. So I think that with his bluff range, he's not going to have many outs, so I'm not very afraid of him shoving in the last 3K with those bluff hands. You know, if he's going to have a lot of flush draws in his check raise range, my play becomes horrible because in addition to his value range, he has all the auto jams with those flush draws. And you know, it's obvious also I get a very good price on that re-steal or rebluff, or attempt to rebluff. He ended up shoving. I think probably means he had a legit hand, but potentially he made a very good read. Then yeah, I think that I decided to 3-bet here with ace-jack suited, by the way. I have not said anything about a few of the hands that have been going by because they haven't been all that interesting. But let me know if you have any questions. I think that there's not a ton that you have to do necessarily to exploit that high 3-bet stat. You just need to be aware of it, and going forward, whether it's, you know, with your pre-flop decisions or your post-flop decisions, you need to pay attention to the fact that his range is much wider than what you may be used to in a spot like that. And I think it allows for a lot of flop aggression, or even just flop stickiness in general. On my part, I think that I can float a lot of flops against such a wide 3-bet and c-bet range, and he's going to have a very tough time doing much about it on future streets if he's not going to just barrel off with all of his weak hands. But anyways, we'll talk about this hand because it's gotten pretty interesting. I 3-bet, I'm facing a small 4-bet. Stacks are a little bit too deep, in my opinion, to be getting this in for over 100 big blinds with ace-jack suited. I think that he may be aggressive enough to make it a profitable jam, although maybe stacks are too deep for me to jam here, and maybe it should be a smaller sizing. But anyways, I opted to just call. I think it's probably best. I'm getting great pot odds, great immediate pot odds. I have a very playable hand. Against the hands that he is folding, it's not really a complete disaster to let him see a flop, because he's 4-bet folding a lot of, let's say, ace-7 offsuit type hands. So it's not really that bad to see a flop against a range that consists of a lot of dominated offsuit hands. Obviously not a good flop for me. 10-9-5 all spades. I'm just going to check fold, and I don't think that I don't feel like I'm being exploited by check folding, you know, a hand that is this strong pre-flop but flopped this week. I don't see a very good reason to bet, to be honest. And it goes check, check. On the 10 river, I still don't see a good reason to bet. It would be to bluff him off of ace-king or ace-queen, which are certainly in his range, but I think it's just a little bit ambitious. He obviously is repping some kind of showdown value. Whether he has it or not, I don't know. But I just think my hand looks a decent amount like what it is. I think that if I had a hand like queens, he would have expected me to, well, to get it in pre-flop. Or let's say I had a hand like ace-10, he would have expected me to perhaps bet the turn. Whether I would or not, I'm not sure. I think both lines are viable in that spot. Anyways, I do decide to check here. I don't think... First of all, I'm not positive I'm going to make him fold ace-king, ace-queen. I think maybe more likely than not, but it's not an insanely profitable bluff. And then I also don't know that he doesn't have some kind of raggedy, like, 10-7 offsuit, or, you know, some kind of pair, 9x, 5x, pocket jacks that without a spade that he got kind of timid with. I actually think I should put some thought into making this call. Another hand that he's repping very credibly is, like I said, an ace-7 offsuit with one spade, or perhaps a king-7 offsuit with one spade. And I do beat those hands, and they do play this way, and perhaps they decide that they can bluff the river, although they might just give up and take their showdown value as well. I do end up folding. I think I should have thought about that a little more, but I think I probably would have been cool with folding that. Obviously jacks, we're going to raise get in here. I do think that it's interesting to consider, so let's say 36% is the stat we have for his 3-bet. At what point we want to 4-bet get it in for value, and then how often we want to be 4-bet bluffing. He struck me as the type of player that when he 3-bets ace-x suited in a spot like this, he's going to jam. But I could be wrong about that. But certainly any ace-jack plus, he's going to jam, and some of his suited Broadway hands he's going to jam as well. So I was a little bit reluctant to 4-bet bluff him, but I think that it would be good, and maybe for the next part of this series, if we look at some ranges, or in the comments section would be great, and I can maybe go over them in the next video. Go over what we think a 36% range looks like, and how often, given certain assumptions about the way you'd play it, how often is he gonna fold against a 4-bet with that range. And we can even play around with the effect of our blockers, which will be pretty interesting. I didn't remember that he had ace-7 suited and that he shoved there, which is funny because I said I feel like he's the type to shove ace-5 suited.